Okay. Let me know if you can hear me all right. I have the air conditioner running in here because it's a bajillion degrees. So if it's affecting the sound too much, I could turn it off and be a sweaty pig. So we'll be starting here at 3 o'clock, but just give people a chance to get in. Check in. Check. Sounds good. Okay. 2:30. Thanks everyone for being here. We only have a couple people, but that's fine. I still enjoy this no matter how many people are watching. So I was just saying, if any of the few that are watching right now, if there's a problem with the audio because my air conditioner is interfering, just let me know and I'll turn it off. So if someone who's watching could just type if it's good or not, I'll be good to go and I'll get started here. So, yeah, the news has been dominated by Trump's tweet, the audience chanting "send her back" last night, and things like that. So I figure that's where I'll start. Let's start from the beginning. I did a video on this that described my initial reaction. I always try to look at these things in two ways. One, is it morally the right thing to do? And then second, is it strategically to do? Now, to me, I think that the moral thing is what I always try to do. Granted, I fail all the time. We all do. All of us are hypocrites at times. But I do think that it's worth trying to do the right thing to be a good person. So for me, that argument's usually enough. But you also want to be thinking strategically because a lot of people don't share your moral views. And so you need to be able to show them, well, yes, but even still, even if you disagree with the morality of it, it's still not a good idea on the strategic level. So let's just real quick, I'm not going to rehash exactly what my video was, but I'll talk about kind of how I viewed Trump's tweets morally and then strategically what I thought about them. So morally, I thought that this was the wrong way to go for Trump. I didn't think it was racist. I didn't think it was a huge deal even. But one of my big pet peeves is I honestly believe that once someone is an American citizen, I don't care if they were made it yesterday. I don't care if they're first generation, if they're an immigrant, where they came from, what their skin color is, what their religion is. None of that matters to me. If you're an illegal American citizen, you are as American as me, period. That's the way our system's set up. That's how we should treat everyone. I mean, people have heard me say before, some of the best Americans I know are immigrants to this country who came here the legal way, working like 18 hours a day. They know more about American history than me most of the time. So it just, sometimes I get a little upset when people treat like, oh, somehow, I'm, one person's more American than another based on, where they came from and things like that. I think that that's crap. Now, where I do think you could be, quote, more American, though it's kind of a dumb way to put it in my opinion, is what are your beliefs? I constantly say, I don't care. Like, if you saw, I did a couple live streams with my friend Basic Thoughts. Like, I'm trying to get I don't know how clear I am on this, but I'm trying to get across that I just don't care about all the categories I'm in. I don't care that I'm basically Christian. I don't care that I'm white. I don't care that I'm a man. Like, all that stuff, it's like, I won't say irrelevant, but it's the least interesting stuff about all of us. What I care is about, my opinions, my actions, and things like that. So when I'm looking at people and how I'm judging them, that's how I'm trying to judge them. Again, I fail all the time, as I probably will in this video. People will probably be able to point where I'm being a hypocrite because I have a lot to say. But that's basically what I'm worried about. So when someone says like, "Oh, are we worried?" People are worried whites will be the minority in the future. I just don't care at all. I don't care. Like, I'm more concerned with people who think like me, not existing in the future than people that look like me. I mean, the world would probably be a better off place if there weren't a lot of people that look like me. So I don't know. I think I have a rugged charm, but so it's just irrelevant to me. So this kind of idea that Trump, I think as always, Trump's ham-handed. I don't think he was being racist about it. People say, was it xenophobic or was it nativist? Now, here's what I think happened. I think Trump watched Tucker Carlson, and he was having a feud with Ilhan and Omar, and Tucker correctly points out, look, her family fled this terrible place where her family was in danger. They came to the United States, and the United States is such a great country that she was able to, from coming here as a teenager, I don't know how old she is, 30, I assume early 30s. By that point, she's able to be one of the most powerful people, not only in the country, but in the world. Like, that's a very impressive thing. And that's not to knock Omar for, say what you will about her, and AOC and the rest of the squad. Whatever you might say, oh, but things were given to them and blah, 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 and they're in easy districts. They ran and they won. And so, you got to tip your cap for them for that, if nothing else. So, Tucker's point was, to come to a country like that not only just let you come, but treated you well enough that you were able to become one of the most powerful people in the country, you should have a little grace and you should have a little respect for that country, And she doesn't. And this could be shown in hundreds of ways. Some people did some things on 9/11. The Al-Qaeda comment where she just kind of like, oh, why don't we look at the military as just as bad as Al-Qaeda? Kind of some of her comments that have been said to be anti-Semitic. I don't think all of these things on their own really are that damning. Like, some of them are. Like, the Al-Qaeda thing, it's like, oof. But you could give the benefit of the doubt in each thing. But it comes to be a pattern. And it's not even those things, really, that make me the most upset. It's this idea of the rhetoric that comes from the squad saying, like, the Betsy Ross flag was racist. This country's always been racist. Like, this idea that you see coming from the progressive left a lot. Yes, there have been problems historically with racism and things in this country, but the way that it's portrayed is that this is this evil, horrible country and that it needs to be scrapped from the ground up. And on the weekend where we see, people storming an ICE detention center and raising the Mexican flag and defacing the United States flag, and Antifa terrorists parroting the same language of these groups saying, I'm attacking concentration camps, and then people in the media and these people ignoring it, and then other people like Sean King saying that this was a martyr. Like, Tucker's right. One of the things Tucker talks about is, one of the things that's great about this country is we have this idea of diversity. It's not like England where there were English, or France where there were the French. Like the United States, yes, we initially had kind of the founding fathers, but it's always been kind of a melting pot of people coming from different areas. That, not perfect. Of course, there were things like slavery, Jim Crow, but the idea was we really didn't care about your religion, your skin color, and all that stuff. The idea of the United States, and we've never achieved it fully, but the idea is you are judged as an individual. That's why it's the greatest country in the history of the world. That's what was codified, that we judge you based on the content of your character, based on your individuality. You have personal responsibility, you have liberty, you have freedom. That's the idea. We focus on the individual, not the collective. And so what holds us together, right? It's different now that kind of the world's becoming more global, but, what held England together in the 1800s? Well, it was that it was the English. They were all descended from the same people. That's what held France together. That's what held Germany together. But if you take people from all different areas, you need something to hold you together. And that idea is, it doesn't matter if you come from Spain, if you come from Zimbabwe, if you come from Australia, if you come from Japan, or if you were born here. We all have this idea of wanting to make the country great, and wanting to have personal responsibility and personal liberty, and expanding on those goals. We have different ideas from how to get there, obviously. But if you have a group of people that hate the country, and they're in positions of power, how can the country continue? That's what Tucker was trying to say. That's what Trump's trying to say. So I think that Trump sees this, and he's not the most careful with his choice of words. But I think his heart's in the right place a lot of times. And so just like the Charlottesville thing, technically what he said comes off as like, wait, what? Did he say they're good people? Well, no. Because he specifically says in that same speech, I'm not talking about the white supremacists. Now, there's a question, were there good people? Yes, technically there were, but I bet Trump didn't know about them. People like the ACLU that were on that side, people like militia members that were trying to stop a fight, etc. It's very similar here. The specifics are wrong in what Trump said, but the overarching theme, I think, is correct. So the specifics of, he says Congresswomen applying to the squad, which, what a stupid name. But anyways, meaning AOC, Presley, Rashida Tlaib, and Ilhan Omar, should go back to where they came from, make it work there, and then come back and show us how it's done. Well, only one, Omar, was an immigrant to this country. The others were at least second generation. So some of them, it seemed, I think AOC's family may have been here longer than Trump's. Regardless, it was ham-handed, and it was a dumb thing to say morally in that sense. That it's just like, dude, don't say go back. Now, I understand. A lot of Trump supporters are saying, but he did say come back. And yes, that is true. This isn't like the old Clayton Bigsby skit on Dave Chappelle. Go back to your country. It wasn't like that. He's saying, if you're so smart and you hate this country so much, why don't you look at the places where you originally came from and how terrible they are? Go back and show us that you can fix them. Then we're more likely to listen to you and you can fix the problems here. Now, again, it's not the most moral thing to say, but it's no worse than what Trump said before. It's no worse than lock her up. It's no worse, and many other things that he said. So it's just that, and this is where strategically he messed up. He should have known that this would be used to call him racist. Of course, you've heard me say it 1,000 times on this channel. All of the cultural institutions of power are dominated by the establishment Democrats. So the entertainment industry, the media, academia, Silicon Valley, they're all going to go guns a-blazing. They only have one move left. All they could say is racism, 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 racism. That's all they have. Mitt Romney was a racist. Nancy Pelosi, racist. Joe Biden, racist. That's all they have. Because the policies are unworkable. And I've said for a long time, I really believe that a lot of these policies are about consolidating power and kind of a globalization move where they're trying to disrobe the idea of national sovereignty and they want kind of one big collective world government. That's what I truly believe. I think that's what you see with the EU. I think that's what you see trying to happen here. The best way to do that is to eliminate the middle class. Make everyone serfs so you have all these insane multinational businesses that are running everything and then all of us that are relying on them in governments. That's the plan. In my opinion. Why would the multinationals want globalization? Well, because if there's only one set of rules to follow, that allows them to span the globe and collect even more wealth. That allows their labor pool skyrockets, right? Because now they're not just choosing from a labor pool in the United States, they're choosing from all over the world. They only have to follow one set of rules, and they'll be so wealthy, they have heavy input. They only have to lobby one government at that point to get their rules. This is exactly what you see happening with the EU. That's why the UK, the people could vote how they want, but that's what happens. Yeah, Belle, I don't think it was racist at all. Now, I do think it was poor strategically for the reasons I said. So, anyways, let me talk a little about, people were saying, well, this was 4D chess. I don't think so. I think Trump supporters give Trump way too much credit in this sense. Trump's got two things going for him. I think that, well, he's got more than two things, obviously, but I think that Trump's far more intelligent than his opponents give him credit for. And I also think that he's got a very good instinct, right? And I think that he has a great instinct for what a lot of working class Americans are thinking, and that's because he actually cares about America and working class Americans. The people had often said that nothing would change until you get an independently wealthy person that can't be controlled. I don't know if Trump's that. He seems to be acting in that way much of the time, in my opinion. But it's like you have all these people in Washington, and I know, they go and they're like, yeah, we're looking out, and I don't care where you're from. You could be Republican, Democrat, maybe you're Republican and you're from, your constituents are all rural people in, the Rust Belt. Or maybe you're a Democrat and your constituents are all inner city people. But both these are real Americans, and they're both struggling. One might be on the left and one be on the right, these constituents. But it seems more often than not, nothing gets done to help these people. Almost every policy we have is consolidating more power to the top. And I mean this about the establishment and Republicans and Democratic Party. More power to the top, screwing over the little people more. Screwing over the middle class, throwing a bone to the poor people, but that doesn't help. Government assistance to poor people, that doesn't help them generationally. That's designed to get you on your feet and then get you moving again. But when people become reliant on it, all you're doing is pacifying and setting up a feudal system. That's why you see places like California that have both the richest and poorest people in the entire country. It's insanity. The rich people don't mind it. They'll pay a little more in taxes to give you free welfare as long as they have control over you. That's the idea. They don't want people that can compete with them, and the people that can compete with them are self-sufficient middle-class people. But I digress. I'm going off here. So I think Trump has good instincts because I think a lot of politicians, regardless of what they say, kind of fit into the big club, and then once they're in Washington, even if they had good intentions, they end up focusing more on that big club. Trump's been in the big club his whole life. So when he's talking about working Americans, I truly believe he means it. Is he perfect? No. I criticize him all the time. The deficit spending, for one. Bombing Syria. I criticize him all the time. But I think that's where he's coming from. So when he shoots his mouth off, see, he trusts his instincts. That's why you have all these advisors telling him, dude, stop using Twitter. Stop using Twitter. And he's like, no. Because he trusts his instincts. I think a lot of what he tweets hurts him. Why is he tweeting about Rosie O'Donnell or Arnold Schwarzenegger's show? Or that's punching down. That can't help him. But some of what he tweets helps. And the fact that he doesn't have a fair media. They don't treat him fair. They're 90% negative towards him. So he has to speak to the people somehow. So he does it through the rallies. And he does it through Twitter. That's my opinion on how he does it. So, yeah, a lot of the stuff, because he doesn't have a censor, he doesn't have someone looking over his shoulder, comes off crappy. But I still think it's more of a net positive. I don't like the chirping and insults oftentimes. But most of the time it doesn't hurt him, because the other thing he has going for him is, I truly believe that he is going up against the politically dumbest people in the history of our country as the establishment Democratic Party right now. They constantly shoot themselves in the foot. Trump says something that seems like it'd be an easy win for them, and they go out and shoot themselves in the foot. Let me give you an example. Trump says, hey, did you see that terror attack in Sweden last night? That's why we got to be careful with who we leave in the country. And the media's like, there was no terror attack in Sweden last night. That's it. That's all they have to say. Make him look like a buffoon. But instead they say, there was no terror attack in Sweden last night. And actually, Sweden's this ridiculously peaceful place where there is no terror attacks ever. And then people were like, well, that's not true. Actually, terror attacks have been going way up. As of things like rapes. As of things like grenade attacks. And so then it's like the Democrats shot themselves in the foot. And I think that's what you see going on here. But anyways, that's my feeling. Was it the best thing? No. If I was president, would I tweet something like that? No. I would have tweeted something like this instead. I would have said, these freshmen, there was a terror attack this weekend, reiterating the rhetoric they use, that was calling our government officers Nazis and the centers they work in concentration camps. That inspired an attack on them. I truly hope everyone's safe. And I think that these people need to think about how their rhetoric comes off as hatred for America and what it can inspire. That's what I'd have said. Now, people are welcome to think, if you don't like America, leave it. And this isn't something new, right? This was said all the time to people I saw on boards when Obama was president. People would complain about Obama. Get out of the country if you don't like it. Tons of Hollywood people said if Trump got elected, they were going to leave the country. This was skin color irrelevant. Trump, the fact that he said this to, quote, 4 women of color is what's being used as racism. But I don't think it was racist at all. And I think that this cry wolf scenario where you can't say anything to people that are, quote, minorities or it's automatically considered racism is ridiculous. Look, there are plenty of black and Hispanic and people of all sorts of ethnicities in the Democratic Party that disagree with Trump, right? There have been since 2016. Yet he never told any of them to go back to their country. So why wouldn't he? If he was truly a racist, Why is he just saying it now? Could it be because these four people, in his opinion, hate the country? They're cheering for, their rhetoric led to a domestic terror attack on the country, led to people flying a Mexican flag at a federal facility, and they didn't speak out against it. They say racist, racist, racist. They call Trump a Nazi. They call him a racist. They call his supporters racist or Nazis. Omar just retweeted an article that was saying all Trump supporters are racist. So Trump's sticking up for those people and he's fed up with it. Is it the best way to approach it? No, but I don't think it was racist. And I think that these people that just want to say racist are terrible. Yeah, it was a knee jerk. I think he probably wrote it himself, though. But, no, let me defend the Democrats to an extent here. I also am against this idea of this knee-jerk reaction that anything you say, Omar could say about Israel is anti-Semitism. That's garbage, too. And I talked about this. You could go back and look at a video of mine. It's from March, and it talks about the resolution that the Democrats passed when Ilhan Omar apparently was saying things that were deemed anti-Semitic. And it starts off, the title of it's like Garbage Resolution. You go back and watch that video because, one, I talked about the irony of that everyone was talking about this, that you had people that were accused of anti-Semitism in the Democratic Party. So instead of saying we condemn that, the Democrats said we condemn all hate. This is a theme with the Democrats. They do this over and over. I'll just give you one example. When Congressman Gifford was shot by a maniac, they said that was right-wing. Bernie Sanders comes out and says, this was right-wing rhetoric leading to this. Can you even be safe in this area not being right-wing? The right must condemn this rhetoric. And he fundraised off of it. Then fast forward to one of his supporters shooting Steve Scalise in a Republican ball field. Did he say, we must condemn left-wing rhetoric? No, of course not. He said condemn all hate. Then back to Charlottesville. Did he say condemn all hate? No, he said condemn right-wing hate. And this is the game the Democrats play all the time. It's not that hard to just condemn all bigotry. One, you shouldn't say if your side's accused of some kind of specific bigotry, you shouldn't say, well, we condemn all bigotry, because that's kind of worthless. Okay, so basically you're giving cover then to your side. But second, if you are going to do that, then condemn all bigotry. Instead, what this resolution said was, we condemn bigotry against women and LGBT and Muslims and Jews and the Sikh community and the Buddhist community and people of color. Nothing about men, nothing about Christians, nothing about straight people. Now you might say, well, they face less bigotry. But that doesn't matter. That bigotry can exist. And if you're condemning all bigotry, why do you list specific groups and leave others off? It's absurd. It was just more dog whistling because they truly believe in this critical race theory idea of, well, you can't really be bigoted or racist against the oppressor groups. And the oppressor groups are white or men or straight or Christian. Those groups, we're not going to condemn bigotry against them. And it's the same thing here. Now Trump says, that's bigotry. But what about all the examples that we have on the left doing the exact same type of thing? For example, there's all kinds of stuff today about how, for example, Jerry Nadler said Sebastian Gorka that was working on Trump's team, he wanted to see his immigration papers, wanted to try to deport him. I don't remember the hullabaloo about that. Do you remember that uproar? Remember the media freaking out about that? Why, if Trump would have just said we should lock up these women, would that have been okay? That's what he said about Hillary. Would that have been better? I guess, right? That's what we're led to believe. Because we have Nancy Pelosi just a couple months ago saying, without any evidence that Trump committed a crime, well, I don't want to see him impeached, I want to see him in prison. What's the difference? That's somehow okay. Calling someone a Nazi is okay. Saying they should go fix the country that they came from and then come back and fix ours, that's over the line. What is the distinction? And people say, well, it's racism. But why? What makes that distinction worse? Well, the rhetoric could lead to violence. We just saw this weekend the rhetoric of these four people actually leading to a domestic terror attack. No one in the media or these four freshmen Congress want to condemn it. They're approached specifically. Will you condemn this? Will you condemn this? Nothing. Absolute crickets. Now, anyone issuing threats to Omar and them because apparently she's getting threats or AOC are disgusting. They should be arrested. They should be called out. But that doesn't mean that we can't criticize them. Again, I thought that it was slightly morally bad the way Trump did it. Not a huge deal. I thought that Pelosi saying Trump should be in prison was slightly morally bad. Did I do a video on it? No, it wasn't a big deal. It was just more stupidity. That's all. That's how I looked at it in my head. But I don't remember the media going ham on it either. So now you have to respond because this is the big story. Now, it gets further than this, because last night then, Trump's at a rally, and he's talking about Omar on AOC and Presley. And some of the stuff they've said, like, what is it about Trump, what Trump said that was specifically bad? And I saw some people say things like, here's some of the answers you got. Here's response number one you get from the Democrats. This is stupid, how racist, what a terrible thing for the president to say. And by the way, Melania should get sent back. Okay, so you just engaged in what you're calling racist behavior. See, there's two kinds of ways to be racist. There's racism out of ignorance, and then there's intentional racism. So you could say, maybe Trump didn't know, even if I don't think his comment was racist. But if you do, you could say, well, there's a chance he didn't think of it as racist. So it would be, if you think it's racist, it's racism out of ignorance. But if you then say that, and then do the exact same thing, you're now engaging in intentional racism. Oh, but it's different because why? Because Melania looks different? Or is it because Republican and connected to Trump? As is always the case. This is the double standard that we constantly see with the Democrats. You can't pick on women, well, unless they're Republican. Can't mess with black people, well, unless they're Republican. Can't make rape jokes, well, unless they're Republican. And on and on and on and on. Remember the way Trump treated Hillary? Oh, can you believe everything was sexism, sexism, sexism. But the way all the Democrats treated Sarah Palin, no problem. My view on it is, both Sarah Palin and Hillary Clinton are far more powerful than probably I'll ever be. They both seem competent in their own ways. So why should I have to look at them as their gender first? That's absurd. They're a competent lawmaker. I'm some nobody right now. Hopefully someday I'll be a lawmaker, right? But what, I can't criticize them or it's sexism just based on the way I was born? It's ridiculous. And so, that was response number one. Response number two I saw was, well, you know what was racist about it? It was the idea of claiming that there's this form of dual loyalty, that like Omar has a loyalty to Somalia in addition to the United States, and that's what makes it bad, because it shows that people that look different must not be fully in allegiance with the United States. Does anyone else remember Ilhan Omar accusing people that support Israel of dual loyalty? Anyone else remember that? That's funny. The same Democrats that defended her then are now saying, how dare Trump accuse people of dual loyalty? That's racism. And it's ridiculous. I find it ridiculous also that I don't care that I'm a white person. I already said that in this video. I don't care at all. What I care about is this idea that there is this theory that is prevalent in our cultural institutions of power that you can't be oppressive or you can't be bigoted towards these oppressive groups. That's what I'm fighting against. And this idea that, you know, you'll have Ben Shapiro and you'll have all these Republicans, you know, if they say something about anyone who's Jewish, all of a sudden that's anti-Semitism. But you can bash white people all you want. You can bash Trump supporters all you want. You can bash Christians all you want. It's just if you bash the Jews. Now I understand. There are historical atrocities that occurred to those groups more recently that are far outweigh what's occurred to whites or Christians. I get that. But the point is, you exacerbate the problem by pretending it's okay to be bigoted towards certain groups. And so we see, you know, if Omar and them can say anything they want. Like I said, well, I'll get to that in a second. So I just thought that was stupid. So we have Trump's crowd chanting, send her back. Trump since came out and said, well, he didn't really like it. And people were like, then why didn't you stop it? It's so stupid. Now, why is Trump always held to this standard that he has to condemn his crowd? He has to condemn his fans, but no one else does. Where's the media on all of the people that defended Antifa, including CNN, including people like AOC and Ilhan Omar, whose rhetoric was parroted by this terrorist, including people like Sean King, who said he was a martyr? Where are they demanding answers for the fact that this terrorist committed that attack and no one's condemned it on that side? Are they demanding people condemn it? No, not at all. But every time, if David Duke says, I like Trump. Trump has to condemn it 1,000 times. If Barack Obama is in a picture palling around with Louis Farrakhan, no questions asked. That's the double standard. That's what irks me so much. So we have people, was anyone asked, hey, do you condemn the fact that we saw a bunch of people that are apparently followers of yours go to an ICE facility and take down the American flag and raise the Mexican flag? Has anyone asked them that? Nope. It's just Trump. Has anyone asked when, not just people in a crowd, go to the women's rally, go to the anti-Trump marches, see what they say about Trump supporters, see what they say about Trump. Has anyone made them say, hey, your supporters, Ilhan and Omar, are calling Trump a Nazi? Any comment? You denounce that? It's okay to call Trump a Nazi. Why is that exactly? Why is that okay? So you mean to tell me if they'd have told Trump, hey, go back to your country, we don't want you here, then all of a sudden all these people that are outraged would have been like, oh my God, how could they say that to Trump? No, of course they wouldn't. They'd say, well, that's fine. Drumpf, right? Isn't that what Stephen Colbert, D-R-U-M-P-F? He always Drumpf. That was what his family came as. Cool for them, right? Cool for them to dog whistle that somehow. How many times has he called Drumpf, which is a shout back to, he's not really an American, that's some foreign name. Cool for them to pick on Melania for years. She should have to go back to her country. She's an immigrant, right? No problem. No one spoke up. No one said a damn word. But now all of a sudden, Trump supporters yelled, send her back. Did they say send her back because she's black? Because she came from Somalia? No, they said send her back because she's tweeting out articles that say that all Trump supporters are racist. She said some people did some things about 9/11. She doesn't understand why people, like, when they talk about Al-Qaeda, have contempt in their voice about it. Why don't they have contempt about the U.S. military? What if you had a son that's over in Afghanistan fighting Al-Qaeda? Maybe he died. I had at least one friend that died over there. I'm supposed to just be like, oh, okay. Yeah, okay. That's fine. What if you were someone who fought in the Black Hawk Down incident in Somalia, and she said that you're evil, that you were killing thousands of Somalians? Oh, it's okay. It's stupid. What if you're someone, an ICE agent, that her and her colleagues have called you Nazis or said that you're working at concentration camps? All of that's okay. No problem. She could say all that. No one holds her to task for any of that. But if you say, you know what? If you don't want to be an American, get out. All of a sudden, that's beyond the pale. You could call Trump a Nazi. You could say he should be in prison. You could say his wife should be sent back to her country. You could say that his kids ought to be put in facilities with sexual abusers, as has been said about Barron Trump. You could say all of that. No problem. You could say this country, the Betsy Ross flag's racist. The current flag's racist. You could be supporters of people that say that. No problem. You could say that immigrants that are coming from other countries are better than the Americans that are here. No problem. None of that matters. That's all has to do with race, just as much as what Trump said, based on their criteria. You could say that they're deplorable Trump supporters. You could say they're all racist. You could say they're all three-toothed rednecks who hate immigrants. I'm not making this stuff up. I've done videos on this, panels on CNN, with the guy who said that while everyone was laughing. And all of that's okay. But those very same people that say that stuff feign out, oh my goodness, Trump's crowd chanted send her back. The double standard is ridiculous. Now, would I chant send her back? No. But I also wouldn't have chanted lock her up to Hillary. What do you expect from regular people? Show me Trump calling out Omar's supporters. Show me Republicans calling out the supporters of Democrats, like you see with this. Trump hates Omar. Trump hates AOC. Trump hates Pelosi. He'll talk about that. I haven't heard him saying all Pelosi supporters are racist. They're all Nazis. I haven't heard that. But I hear that the opposite way all the time. I have to listen to people with credibility and power in the media, in academia, in politics, say that if you're wearing a hat that supports Trump, that's a sign of racism. That's the new KKK hood. I have to listen to them saying that a kid who had that hat on, that was screamed at by adult black racists for an hour, then had a Native American racist who said those black racists actually had a point to those kids, get in their face, be smeared by the mainstream media just because he had a Trump hat on and he smirked. Because that's an offense. I had to watch them cheer for a hate hoaxer named Jussie Smollett who tried to smear all Trump supporters by saying someone in a MAGA hat committed this hate crime on him because he wanted to foment hatred to more Trump supporters. I had to listen to that. But Trump fans saying, send her back, that's beyond the pale. I'm sick and tired of it. Again, am I saying it's the classiest thing in the world to do? No. But none of the rallies, whether it's Trump or anyone else, has the most classy people. It's kind of like people get a fervor, like at a concert crowd. It's not the end of the world. Trump isn't saying, and Trump came out and condemned it. Oh, he said he condemned it, but he did. Has he taken any action to send anyone back? No. Did he say in his comment, go back and fix things and then come back and tell us how it's done? Yes. It's so stupid. They just want to shout racism, and it's beginning to not work. Yes, the media gets all hyped up. But regular people are tired of it. They're tired of it. Mitt Romney was the biggest racist. George W. Bush, I don't like Mitt Romney or George W. Bush. I didn't like a lot of what they did. But they were racist. They were racist. You know, Paul Ryan's a racist. Ben Shapiro's a racist. Tucker Carlson's a racist. I'm a racist because I support Trump. Over and over and over. And I just don't care anymore. There are real racists. You're diluting it. The word's starting to mean nothing because you say everything's racist. Now listen, we're all hypocrites to some extent, myself included. And I fully admit I'm biased. I'm a Trump supporter and a Republican. But I swear to you, I try to give the benefit of the doubt. I am on record when Ilhan Omar was saying the things that everyone was saying anti-Semitic, that I could not prove they were anti-Semitic. And so I wasn't going to judge her as racist or bigoted because of it. That's what I said. And I meant it. I'm sick and tired of people from both sides just wanting to throw that word. Bigotry, racist, prejudice. You assume the worst motivations in people. This is the deal with Ilhan Omar's comments and with Donald Trump's comments. With both sets of those comments. If you walked into those, hearing those comments thinking, I think these people are racist, then those comments to you are proof of their racism. But if you're objective, then I don't think they are. Just because it happened to be for women of color doesn't make it racist. If I could say all the people that AOC calls out happen to be white, does that mean she's racist against white people? And this is constantly the case with Trump. Oh, he attacks women. Yes. And men. Oh, he attacks black people. Yes. And white people. And Hispanic. And Muslims. And Christians. And straight people. And gay people. And people with disabilities. And people without disabilities. Isn't that kind of the theme with Trump? He just, basically Trump attacks anyone who attacks him. That's it. And it's just, the threshold, well, Trump's statements could lead to violence against Omar. There is no direct line for what Trump said to violence against her. If someone commits violence based on that, that person's to blame. Now, you could say that Trump engaged in kind of divisiveness, but you can't do that yourself. Obama also engaged in that divisiveness, didn't he? With all sorts of things. Trayvon could have looked like his son. Right? Going to where a bunch of cops were killed by Black Lives Matter activists at the funeral talking about how, well, the cops need to be better racially. You don't think that was divisive? You don't think that the people that were screaming before Trump even was sworn into office were having riots? Oh, they weren't riots, they were just protests. Yeah, that's not what the Portland police said. They called it a riot. You don't think that was divisive? You don't think calling half of Trump supporters deplorable was divisive? You don't think saying that anyone who supports Trump's a racist or a Nazi is divisive? Both sides do it. Trump's guilty of it as well, no doubt. So if that's how you want to say, if there's violence, Trump contributed, sure, but so did the left. And secondly, we have already seen the left's violence in the same token, except worse, lead to violence. Trump saying maybe Omar should go back to our country and then come back when she fixes it. That's not good. I've already said it's not good. But that's a far less directive or dog whistle to violence against Omar than saying the ICE centers are concentration camps and the people running them are Nazis. And simultaneously, we should punch Nazis. That's the direct call to violence. And it happened. Yet they're silent. Not a damn word from the people that had this rhetoric. It's always this way, isn't it? Remember when Trump criticized Omar saying some people did some things? What was the media's response? Go back and look. What did they say? Trump is inciting violence against Omar. Because as soon as Omar said that and Trump came out and called her out, Omar said, I'm getting death threats. Oh, that must be because of Trump. So that was incitement. Now when we see someone armed with an AR-15 and firebombs, hey, thanks, Val. An AR-15 and firebombs go to an ICE detention center, parroting the exact same rhetoric, saying they're concentration camps and the guards are Nazis. Nothing. The media's not there. No one's calling that incitement. No one's demanding answers from the Democratic politicians that said that. That's why you don't take them seriously with this crap. When you see Trump supporters getting beat for wearing a MAGA hat, I remember watching, what was it, on MSNBC, the woman laughing. Yeah, sure. Like I'm going to feel bad for Trump supporters. Yes, exactly. That's exactly right. Now I want to get on to the people that I respect that are calling this out. The Ben Shapiros, the Eric Weinsteins, other people like that. It's just people I've happened to see on Twitter that were talking about how disgusting the crowd chanting this was. I don't disagree with you strategically, and again, morally it's not something I would do. But in the grand scheme of moral offenses, where's your outrage with all the stuff that we see from the left all the time? Like, Shapiro does this a lot. When Roseanne said what she said, which I truly believe Roseanne didn't know that the woman she was talking about was black, but regardless, she got fired. Shapiro was okay with that. He said, well, she should get fired. But every time it's someone on the left, he says, I don't want them fired. I say that in both. I don't think that people should be fired for this stuff. Ben suspiciously seems to have more fervor when it comes to a Trump crowd chanting this than all of these Democrat fans of people like Pelosi or whatever. All Trump supporters are racist. Doesn't seem to have much passion arguing against that, does he? This is disgusting, it's so sick. Guess what? It's free speech. Those people can chant what they want. If they start to take action, then it's different. I don't agree with that sentiment. I don't want her sent back. I accept that Trump said, no, I don't want, and that is different than what Trump said in his tweet. But it just, people don't look at this in proportionality. It's always, anytime any Republican does something, guns a-blazing, and even the Republican people, I come at them too. I say, yeah, I denounce that. But when it's the left, well then, the left media is not going to go after them, and the people that are not bought and paid by the left mainstream media, they're like, well, let's give them a second chance. Which again, I'm guilty of that as well. But if you honestly, and you take a step back and you look at it proportionally, can you get a better example than this week? One side calls the other side Nazis, says they're running concentration camps, which leads to their United States flag on a federal building being removed, defaced, and the Mexican flag being risen. And then hours later at a different facility, a terrorist going in, trying to kill Nazis running concentration camps, who ends up being killed while trying to light the building on fire and shooting at the guards. That's one hand. And on the other hand, you got Trump, the president, tweeting they should go back to their country and then come back once they fixed it. And that's it. That's the end of the world. Now you look at the reaction by everyone, and you can see the double standard couldn't be more clear. Yet we're supposed to just, well, I will always police my own. I will always stand up for what I believe in. I got flack for saying I thought Trump's tweet was stupid and wrong. I got flack for that. Oh, I get you, Blase. But I got flack from people. Oh, am I selling out? You know, a friend of mine, Drone Tech, that has a channel, he's losing subs. Like 100 subs because he was just like, he didn't say Trump's comment was racist. Just said, I didn't like it. So I'll call them out. But you have to understand, those people saying send her back, they are crapped on by everyone in power. Everyone. The politicians, academia, the entertainment industry, the media. And so where do they go? They go on places like this, right? They go on YouTube, or they go on Facebook, or they go on Twitter. Guess what? You get censored from there too. Now, the people that are defending the domestic terrorists, the people that are saying physically assault Republicans or conservatives so they're afraid to be in public, they get carte blanche. They're allowed to stay on these platforms. But you get upset about that and you start to react. Oh, now you're persona non grata. You're out, man. What you did was over the line. What, saying send her back? Yep. When someone calls you a Nazi, you shut your mouth. You don't defend yourself. That's the lesson learned. And you push people far enough, and yes, they're going to chant send her back at a Trump rally. Did Trump win because he was the most conservative person running? No. Did he win because he lived his life the most like the regular working class people? Clearly not. He's a billionaire. Why did he win? Because people were sick and tired of being treated like crap. And here came a guy that at least was going to fight for them. That's why. And then predictably what happens? That guy gets treated like crap. Nazi, racist, scumbag. Constantly. Over and over and over. Over and over and over. Apparently Trump hates gay people. I've yet to see one. Why? By flying the pride flag? By trying to say that we're going to have policies that we don't deal with countries that criminalize homosexuality? But apparently Trump hates gay people. I'm just told that. No one can give me any evidence why. Well, you know, he wants to ban trans people from the military. There's all sorts of medical conditions that are banned from the military. Diabetics. So has the military been exclusionary towards those groups? Being trans isn't just, okay, I'm trans. There's all sorts of things. Hormones you have to get if you're on the front line. Other stuff. It's not just a matter of saying, if you're going through the whole treatment, it's a whole thing. That's why diabetics can't be in the military. Because it's difficult to get. Now, I don't know that I fully agree with the trans ban in the military. I really don't. I'll have to claim ignorance on it. But just to claim it's one-sided, and still that's not anti-gay, that would be anti-trans if you believe that. Over and over again, he's just as hateful. Oh, everything he does is hateful. It's racist, it's racist, it's racist, it's racist. You want to talk about bigotry and xenophobia? How about this? How about the media slandering Russia for 2 years and anyone from Russia as an agent of Putin? How about that? How about saying Trump's a Russian agent? How's that for slandering? Oh, it was all a lie, by the way, that the media was involved with from day one. Now even the claim that these Russian Facebook trolls that were apparently so devastating that with, less than $1 million they were able to steal an election from Hillary who spent $500 billion. Now we find out, hey, there's no proof they were connected to Putin whatsoever. They just happened to be Russian. But according to all of these elite people on the left, if you're Russian, clearly you have to be an agent of Putin. It's not like you could just be an individual and be Russian. Just like Presley says, right? Representative Presley, one of the people in the squad. We don't want black voices that don't think like us. We don't want trans voices that don't think like us. Your label is who you are. They don't treat you as an individual. And it's okay for them to smear the labels they don't like. No problem. No one ever calls for them to apologize. You call Trump a racist and Nazi, all of his supporters racist, Nazi, all you want. Now, the only time the media will speak up is if they say something about the Jewish people. Because that's another minority. And let's be honest, there is a lot of rising anti-Semitism on the left. Of course, there's still anti-Semitism on the right as well. Isn't that ironic? The left, the party that's supposedly at arms with the alt-right, joining hand in hand for this anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism should be called out. But that's the only time they get called out is if they're attacking another minority. Attack Christians, attack straights, attack whites, attack men. Yeah, that's cool. No one will call you out for that. And I understand. I've talked to people that are like, well, that's because of systemic racism. That's because of systemic bigotry. I get that. But you're not making the problem better. What you're showing then is it's not about equality, it's about revenge. And it is a common belief. That is a theory of critical. Well, racism isn't just racism. It's power plus prejudice. Therefore, it's very difficult or impossible to be racist against white people. Same with sexism. Tell that to the homeless white guy. And you understand like how nefarious this is, because let's assume that you're right. Let's assume that it's all systemic, right? Or it's all due to systemic racism. All the problems we have in this entire country, every problem is systemic racism. First off, if your worldview's that simple, you're probably wrong. Just saying. But let's assume you're right. It's all about system. Can you explain to me then, we have a homeless black man and a homeless white man living side by side on the street. Both went to the same school, both grew up in the same community, have similar problems. Now your argument is the reason that black guy there is because of systemic racism. Okay, what about the white guy? Well, he sucks. Huh, that's why he's there. So don't pretend then, if that's your belief, that somehow your belief system leads to kind of a world where we don't judge people. No, you're just judging the opposite people. That's all. Now, if you say, well, maybe he had systemic oppression as well, okay. Then if there's multiple factors that lead to those two homeless people, let's just solve homelessness. Let's make policies to solve that, to help these people, instead of saying, well, we need to focus on the race. Because when you focus on the race, it's my theory that, one, that's why we see that it's like inner city communities. We've been, ever since civil rights movement, which was a great thing. Why have things been getting worse in a lot of inner city communities? Well, it's because we had the war on poverty. And when you make people dependent on you, generation after generation, they don't develop the skills to subside on their own. I would be the same way. If you gave me money every day, or if you told me I was a victim every day from the time I was a kid, and you encourage single parenthood by giving all sorts of money to only single parent families, and so I only had a mother or a father, probably a mother, I know I would be embittered. I wouldn't work hard to improve myself. I would think the world owed me something. I'd have fell into a gang. I'm not blaming that. The people that come out of that community are better than I'll ever be. The ones that come out and are achieving success. And then, simultaneously, all you do is you grow animosity on the other side. And you drive people into the arms of people like Richard Spencer. Which, by the way, CNN's interviewing. The white nationalists. CNN will flip out. If I was a YouTube person and I interviewed Richard Spencer and disagreed with them, they would say, Rob Noor, some small YouTubers promoting white supremacy. But when CNN has him on to talk about how he hates Trump, no problem. I'm just sick and tired of this garbage double standard. Why is it okay to attack Trump supporters? You want to attack Trump? Fine. I think some of the attacks are absurd and dangerous, calling him a Nazi or a Russian agent. But why is it okay to attack his supporters? Well, at this point, if they're supporting him, they must be racist. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sean King's a big BLM activist. He just came out and said the guy that the domestic terrorist attacked the ICE facility was a martyr. Does that mean anyone who supports Black Lives Matter is a fan of domestic terrorism? Of course not. But that's how they do the inverse. And I've been saying for how long now? You call people Nazis long enough. Here's the danger. You remember that, like, 2016? Richard Spencer got punched? For those of you who don't know, Richard Spencer's like this big white nationalist. But he gets punched on a street corner. And there's this big discussion in the media and academia and other places. Is it okay to punch a Nazi? And most people are like, oh, yeah, you gotta punch a Nazi. And I said, no. Of course it's not. Only if it's in strictly self-defense at that moment. And here's why. Because once you say, yes, it's okay to punch a Nazi, you're a stone's throw away of saying, and anyone who disagrees with me is a Nazi. And if it's okay to punch them, maybe it's okay to use more violence than that. And that's exactly what we see happening. See, AOC, and people don't realize. Let's take the media's view right now of what Trump said. They're saying they're worried about it being violence. So Trump said, you're anti-American. If you don't like this or if you have a problem with this country, why don't go back to yours, fix it, and then come back here and fix this one? Yes, I could see how people could take that message and say, I'm going to commit violence. That's terrible. Does that mean Trump shouldn't say that? Maybe he could be more diplomatic in how he says it, but I don't think it's as bad as, proportionally as this. Your government are Nazis. The law enforcement agents are Nazis. The detention facilities they're running are concentration camps. And it's okay to punch Nazis. Now, what do you think? If you say that enough, someone's going to believe you. And you hear this all the time. The defense of Antifa that's given by people on the left all the time is, well, what if you were back in the time of Hitler? What would you do? Don't you have the moral obligation to stop him? You say that to enough people and people are going to be like, you're right. I do have a moral obligation to stop these Nazis. And all Trump supporters are Nazis. And I can't get to Trump, but I can get to his supporters. And they're going to hurt people with absolute moral righteousness. They will say to them, they're not going to feel bad about it. They'll say, I was right. This was the right thing to do. That's what's going to happen. Now listen, you don't judge people, even as heinous as what AOC and them are saying. And I said this the other day, though a video ended up not getting uploaded. If after this domestic terrorist attack had happened, where someone did die, thank God it was just the terrorist. If AOC and them would have came out and been like, look, I condemn this in the strongest possible terms. Do not go out there committing violence. That is absurd. Donate to us. Get your voice out there. Do what you need to. But no, do not go out there and commit violence. Then I would say, okay, their rhetoric's still dangerous, but at least they're on record condemning violence, so you really can't blame them. And if you don't believe me, if you say, oh, you're just saying that, you go back and watch what I said when Steve Scalise got shot. I wasn't saying this is on the Dems. I said we shouldn't blame them for some nut job, as long as they're willing to say this violence is unacceptable. Which, of course, they said all violence is unacceptable, but okay, that was squirmy, but still, at least they were out there saying it. What are they saying about this domestic terror attack? Nothing. So the next one that escalates, now I'm not so sure. Now they know that it's not like it was out of the foreseen that this guy would have killed an innocent person. He went there with an AR-15, he tried to light the place on fire, commit arson. That's domestic terrorism. That could quite easily have led to more people dying. That's not a stretch to say. So they see it. They see it. They know. Oh, geez, someone took our message seriously, and they went out there and they tried to kill people, these Nazis running these concentration camps. But they won't say anything until an innocent person dies. Then they'll go, it's not our fault. We didn't know. We didn't know this would happen. How hard is it to defend terror or condemn terrorism? But they can't do it. They're asked right to their face. They laughed. Omar laughed when she got in the car, refused to condemn it. How hard would it be if I was in Congress and someone was like, hey, the Charlottesville attack, that guy was a Republican, do you condemn that? Yeah, that's unbelievably heinous. I hope he gets the full weight of the law thrown at him. That's it. That's all you have to say. But they won't say it. I wonder why. Meanwhile, no one's even engaged in actual violence against Omar or anything. And Trump even came out and said, I didn't like that the crowd was saying this. So which actor acted better there? Omar and AOC or Trump? And by the way, here's another prediction I'll make, which I've been saying. AOC out there telling people that are thoroughly convinced, some people that I know that are my friends, we're all dead in 12 years because of climate change. If you believe that, what are you willing to do? You know, just sit in your butt? Well, try to win this next election. If not, I guess I'll leave me and all my family be dead in 12 years. Or maybe you start taking more action. You have to be careful when you're saying things like that. And I know both sides can engage in hyperbolic language like that. We're all dead if the other side wins. That's a terrible way to look at things. But at some point you have to look realistically at what people are saying. And what those policies mean. I never engage. The Green New Deal basically came out. I live in rural Pennsylvania. You couldn't have written a document that basically said, by the way, you'll all be unemployed and worthless in the next 12 years. More clearly than the Green New Deal. What's the two big jobs we have here? Farming and energy. Sorry, they're both gone. Yet, I don't know one person that was like, we got to get violent. We got to send people. No one. People are like, boy, we better start voting. We better mobilize. We're going to lose our country. But no one recommended violence. No one recommended anything heinous. We're not wearing masks. Waving a different flag up in the air. Pulling down the U.S. flag, are we? So, I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. And I don't know. I don't know. Like, it's so transparent. If you could get one thing from watching me, one thing. Don't listen to what the media says, or the entertainment industry says, or Silicon Valley says, or all these politicians, academia. They're full of it. That's the big story this week, Trump's tweet. That's the big story. Now, if you really cared about things like illegal immigration, don't you think Trump's actual policy of changing the rules on asylum from Central America, isn't that a far bigger... Even if you think you hate that, okay, that's a far bigger way to attack Trump. Or a domestic terrorist attack. Put the shoe on the other foot. Let's say that, a Republican went to... It doesn't even have to be... The fact that it was a federal facility is bad enough, but it doesn't even have to be that. A Republican went to a Democratic headquarters and tore down their flag and flew their own flag, and then tried to firebomb their building, and police had to shoot and kill a Trump supporter. What do you think the story would be? What do you think the story will be if an armed gunman goes after Omar's headquarters? I think the story will for weeks be Trump caused this, Trump's evil, Trump supporters are evil, violent, reject him, we need to impeach. That'll be the story. When it's the opposite, not a word. Not a word! And we're supposed to believe, well, that, it's fair. The media's fair. It's ridiculous. How long is it going to be? And then, yes, there is some of me that's conspiratorial, We constantly hear, and if you look at the FBI stats, this is true. Actually, right-wing terrorism is more prevalent in the United States than left-wing terrorism. Well, the first question is, how are you defining terrorism and how are you defining right-wing? And I had a video with my friend Basic Thoughts where we talked a lot about this. Basically, most people say, well, right-wing is fascist and all fascism is right-wing. And so basically you could define every bad government ever as fascist. Because it just means that you have a crappy dictator or leader. Well, then what's the benefit of saying right-wing? You're basically just saying all evil governments are evil. Okay. Why say right-wing? Well, because you want to smear the non-crazy right-wing people with with those people. So what is right-wing terrorism? A dictatorial government's one where a government has total control, right? I'm for smaller government. But somehow, the Democrats that are for bigger government and more government control are less connected to these extremists than me who wants smaller government. How does that make sense? Well, because I'm labeled right, and they're right. That's why. What's up, Eddie? So, it's just stupid things like that. We apply these labels and then smear. But When we say left-wing terrorists like that, it's not that they're left-wing. I'll never smear. Do I think that this guy that attacked that facility, does he have anything to do with my Democratic friends? No. The guy that helped run my campaign when I ran for Congress who's a Democrat, one of my best friends, Tom? No. Nothing to do with him. The local councilman that's a Democrat? No. Even congressional people that are Democrats in the state of Pennsylvania? No. Even AOC and them? No. Just the label left. Every single group, every single politician you can think of has some kind of extremist nutbag that follows them. We shouldn't judge the whole by that extreme group. But what is useful to say is we could see this exact thing led to this exact extreme action. Not that it is the same, but that it leads there. So, for example, instead of saying right-wing violence, if you start to say identitarian violence, like anyone who wants an ethno-state, yep, that's bad. That almost always leads to like the crazy stuff we're talking about. I don't care if they're white nationalists, if they're black nationalists, if they're Jewish nationalists, anything. If you have that sort of ethno-state type advocacy, yeah, that usually ends very poorly. If you say disarm all the populace, yep, that usually ends poorly. Whether it's coming from the right or the left. It seems as if in our country the right wing's defending the right to bear arms, but there's certainly been extremist right-wing governments. That's the first thing they did. Went and took arms from people, right? Oh, thank you, Eddie. So that's more useful than just saying right-wing or left-wing violence. Like, for me, identitarianism in our country, right, seems to be more accepted on the left. In other words, identity politics. So my worldview is based on my race, or my gender, or my sexuality. That seems to be more accepted on the left. So I don't like that. There are also people that say, my worldview is based on my race, which is white. I don't like that either. But somehow, that's more connected to me than the left-wing people that say, oh, and my worldview is based on the fact that I'm black, and I want an area for black. And you say, well, there are no black nationalists. Really? Have you seen Louis Farrakhan? Chumming it up with members of the Black Caucus? And Barack Obama? So don't tell me, they exist. So I don't really care about the labels right and left-wing extremism. What I care about in this specific instance is you can't tell people that government agents are Nazis over and over and expect someone not to take it seriously. That's it. That's all I'm saying. You couldn't say Barack Obama is secretly a Muslim terrorist that's trying to overthrow this country and expect someone not to take that seriously. Now the difference is, I didn't see Mitt Romney or Ron Paul or Paul Ryan or even, there might have been people that questioned his birth certificate, but this idea that he was a Muslim terrorist, you didn't see that parroted as much in the mainstream people with power. But not only do you see that in the left now, but it's not just the political power. It's also the cultural power. And don't be mistaken, cultural power in some instances is actually more powerful than the governmental power. What controls our public thought and our public discourse? That's culture, the culture. And there are institutions that influence that culture. All of your celebrities and musicians and athletes, that's one group of it, right? All of the people in your universities, your thinkers, academia, that's another group. The media, the people that are telling you your news every day, that's a group. The people that are controlling everything that's said in Silicon Valley, that's a group. Yeah, Nate, the president did say that Obama probably wasn't American and a Muslim. Did he say he was a terrorist that he was sympathetic to the hijackers or anything like that? No. And Trump was rebuked heavily for saying that, wasn't he? Yet the left can every day say Trump's a Nazi, Trump's a Russian agent. And again, not only is that the stakes are raised from saying, I don't think this guy was born in the country and he may be a Muslim, to you're a Nazi or you're an agent of the biggest world power against us who stole an election. Not only are those stakes raised, but then also Trump wasn't saying everyone who voted for Obama is a Muslim terrorist. But that is exactly what we're seeing from all these people on the left. Trump's a Nazi. If you voted for him, you're a fascist Nazi. Trump's a racist. If you voted for him, you're a racist. You wear a hat that says Trump, you're a racist. Was anyone saying if you wear a Hope and Change shirt that you were a Muslim terrorist? I didn't hear it. I didn't hear anyone with power saying that. So, I mean, it blows my mind. Not bad, Joe. How's it going? Now, that's not to say that Trump hasn't said, like I said at the beginning, I don't know if everyone was here, but what I said at the beginning of the video. My take on Trump's tweets was I did not think they were racist. I also didn't think that Ilhan Omar's tweets were anti-Semitic. So I'm being consistent on this. I thought that both were clumsy and inappropriate. Not just strategically, but inappropriate. In the specific sense of why I find Trump's tweets inappropriate is because one of the things that angers me more than anything is people that have this mentality that they're somehow more American than you because their family's been here longer. Absolutely ridiculous. To me, if you were a legal citizen of this country, I don't care if you came yesterday, you are every bit as much of an American as me. It is not your background, your skin color, your religion, your sexuality, your age, your weight, how attractive you are, your astrological sign. I don't care about any of that. None of that is what makes you an American. Now, if you say, I think you're less American than me because you hate this country, because you're saying the flag that our country was founded on, the Betsy Ross flag and things like that, is racist, or the current flag is racist, or you don't understand why people are more upset with Al-Qaeda than the U.S. Army, and things like that. I wouldn't use the term you're less American than me, but I would say you seem to have a hatred for this country that's beyond what's reasonable. And I question whether or not our country could continue to exist. You know, and I made this point earlier. We want the diversity, right? Like I was doing with my friend Basic Thoughts, I was doing a video the other day, a live stream. What is the importance of diversity? To me, it's not, hey, we look like a rainbow, there's a bunch of different shades of color here. Or we all came from a bunch of different countries. That's just the factor to get to the end game. The diversity we want is diversity of thought, diversity of action, diversity of experience. You could theoretically look, you could have a white guy and a black woman look completely different. One, you know, the white guy's Muslim, the black lady's Buddhist, you know? And yet they seem to agree on it. You know, they have similar worldviews. They grew up in the same town, or even if they grew up in different towns, you know, both of them had parents that had the same, they're both metal workers, you know? They're both really into baseball. They're both conservatives. Whatever, right? That's not that much diversity then, because it's the thoughts that matter. You would think, coming from different areas of the country or areas of the world, and you know, different religions and different skin color, maybe that would lead to the difference of thoughts, and oftentimes it does. But it's that different of thoughts, different of action, different of interests. That's the diversity we want. So we want that in this country. And yes, we've made mistakes. Absolutely. And it's worth calling out those mistakes. But we also you have to have something cohesive driving you forward. So what is that? Did you ever watch Gladiator, right? Where Marcus Aurelius is dying and he's telling Maximus that he wants him basically to be the new Caesar, but only to give power back to the Senate. And he asks him, before he tells him that, he says, what is Rome? What is the greatness of Rome? And Maximus says, it's the idea, right? That's what America is. Of course the land's beautiful, and you know, the history of it's great, but it's the idea of personal liberty, of your life being your own, of personal responsibility, of the focus on the individual, liberty. That's what makes this country great. And if one person's a Muslim and one's a Christian and one's an atheist and one's a Buddhist, they need something to bring them together. They need to want the United States to be strong and continue to good. And yes, fix problems that exist. But we need an ideal to coalesce behind. And if we have groups of people, particularly in power, that are like, I hate this country, how's that going to work? Now, you might say Omar doesn't hate the country. She's just pointing out criticism, but it doesn't seem that way, does it? And this excuse is always given. You know, people have been saying, I'm not one that's been like verbalizing this a lot, but you wonder, you scratch your head. People have been saying this for years. And it, like so much with the Democratic Party. I feel that the reason Pelosi dislikes AOC and the squad, it's not because she disagrees with them. It's because they let the cat out of the bag. That's the problem. Pelosi's interested in winning and keeping the Democratic Party as strong as possible. That's her concern. So when AOC comes out and it's like, here's the Green New Deal, and we're just going to pay people money that just don't feel like working, that's devastating. That's really bad for the country. Well, we're going to get rid of automobiles and all this stuff. And she's just like, Pelosi's like, dude, shut up. Just shut up. Stop talking. It's not that she hates those policies. If those policies all of a sudden would be polling at 80% favorability, Pelosi would be like, yep, good. But she's just like, dude, shut up. Push for what you want, but what's important is maintaining power. Don't be out, and that's why the establishment Democrats, that's why you saw Jake Tapper, I don't know if you saw this the other day, yesterday, he's talked to at least 4 Democrats in Congress that are like, say what you will about Trump's tweet, but it was a huge loss for the Democrats in the end because it got them to all coalesce around the squad. And the squad is terrible for the country and for the party. That's 4 separate members. And granted, it was anonymous, so take it for what you will. See you, Nate. Nice talking to you. But that's the problem. That's why Pelosi dislikes him. But I don't know. I can't say if Omar and AOC hate the country. I can tell you this, though. They sound an awful lot like the people that I dealt with in academia a lot, at the highest levels of academia, that hated the country. Go to any feminist, almost any feminist curriculum in the United States at university. They'll tell you straight up what they're about. The system is a patriarchy. We need to overthrow it and radically change it. Start from the bottom up. That is not people that love the country. That are people that are saying the country is fatally flawed and we need to start from scratch. That are people that are cheering, and you see this. Again, I was talking to my friend Basic Thoughts about this. Orwell said that he couldn't shake the feeling, even though Orwell called himself a socialist, he couldn't shake the feeling that a lot of the socialists, it wasn't that they cared for the poor people, it was that they hated the people above them. And you can't shake that feeling. You see people burning the American flag. I'm not saying Omar did that, but I'm just saying, you see those people. Do you really think they love the country? You see people holding the flags of other countries as they're at protests and rallies. You think that's not on purpose? You see people saying, actually, the immigrants that are coming in are better Americans than the Americans that voted for Trump. You think that's not on purpose? And I'm not so sure those people are more concerned with having the country be as good as possible or getting some sort of revenge on the groups they think have it coming. That's why people were talked about with such contempt in the Rust Belt. And don't be mistaken, there is a contemptuous nature for a lot of poor people. But it's those oppressor groups, that's where you have the contempt. So, that's my take on it. I just think that, how can we coexist? How can we go forward as a country if this is going on? Will the squad be voted out? AOC won't. I know a little about her district, and it's just so heavy left-leaning. She won't be voted out. The rest, I don't know. I think that there will be a push from establishment Democrats behind the scenes to get someone to primary them. Take Presley, for example. You want to talk about racism. Did you read that comment? We don't need black people that don't think like us. And I say this all the time. Why do you think that the bulk, there's even more? Yeah, I'll get heat from, these people. Of course, the whole squad's good for Trump. I'll get heat from people that, on the left, these identitarian politics. Now, I'm not well out there. I got 7 people watching, right? But people like me get heat. But you know who gets more heat? If you're in one of these groups and you leave. So if you're Kanye or you're Candace Owens. Now, I also hate that the right trots out the same game like tokenism. Look, we got a black that agrees with us. Who cares? Isn't that antithetical to everything we're supposedly criticizing? So I don't care about that. But it is true that when you're one of those people, you get the most heat because you sold out. And some of the crap they'll say about someone like Ben Carson. The best example of this is, without a doubt, in the Islamic world, where you see people like Majid Nawaz, that, is a Muslim reformer. He gets more threats and more vile comments racial slurs from Muslims than someone like a Tommy Robinson will get. I don't think the Republican will win, no. I think AOC's a lock for that. I mean, it's 3-1. Now, there is a reasonably large Jamaican community in our district, but I mean, it's 3-1 registered Democrats to Republicans. I mean, Trump got 30-something% in California, right? And that's basically considered no chance Trump ever wins there, right? So 3-1's worse than that. I mean, there's just no chance. AOC, whoever wins that Democratic primary is going to win. Now, it'll be interesting to see what AOC says, because it'll be difficult for her to use her racial attack. I mean, she'll just go with the you sold out black people line. That's what it'll be. But, I mean, it's so stupid that we think of politics this way. I just don't care. You know, if I lived in a district and I ran for office and my constituents were majoritarily black, I would do everything I could to help those constituents. In fact, even though they're not in my district, if I win for Congress, I'll do everything to help those communities anyways, because they're all Americans and that's your job as a representative. But what does my skin color have to do with it? Maybe I understand where they're coming from a little better, I guess, but, you know. So, I mean, that's kind of my thoughts on this whole... I mean, it's been blown way out of proportion. I'm critical of Trump's tweet. And let me just say this, though, like, to criticize probably not anyone in this thread right here, but, you know, like I was saying, my buddy Drone Tech lost hundreds of subscribers for not even saying Trump's tweets were racist, just saying he didn't like them. I said the same, and I've got heat for saying... from Trump supporters for saying I didn't like him bombing Syria, or I didn't like the fact that the deficit spending's out of control. And I'm just making a plea to you out there. Don't ever idolize a person. Don't. You could look up to them. You could like a lot of what they say. But if you put yourself in a position where you change your thoughts merely because someone you like did something different, you're in a very bad place. What do I mean by this? The reason I like Trump is because a lot of what I think he agrees with. Well, I can tell you right now, I mean, for those of you that might know me for a while, here's why I voted for Trump. Because I think that the establishment, Republican and Democratic Party, have a consolidation on power, and they don't care about the average working class people, and that they want to keep all outsiders out. Bernie and Trump, regardless if they are actually outsiders, appeared to be outsiders, and the establishment didn't want them. And so those are the two people I wanted, because at least then it would force the establishment to come out and out themselves for the corruption that they had, which they have done in spades by cheating Bernie out of the primary and by all of the nonsense that's gone on to Trump ever since the election, including the ridiculous Russia investigation. So that's it. That was my number one reason for voting for him. Now, I agree with a lot of his economic policies. I agreed heavily with his stated foreign policy, particularly in his second debate, where he was like, why are we fighting Assad again? Why are we fighting the Russians again? Aren't we supposed to be fighting ISIS? Why wouldn't we work with these groups to fight ISIS? Yes, exactly. Instead of arming al-Nusra and ISIS to fight Assad, why aren't we helping Assad fight ISIS? Or better yet, just staying out of it. That type of thing I want. But guess what? Trump's gone against that sometimes. Trump bombed Syria twice. Both times without evidence. First time it turns out that General Mattis said a year later, we still don't have proof it was Assad that gassed his people. Second time now, independent investigations have showed that it was a hoax. The white helmets, supposedly our allies, they're the ones who actually faked a gas attack that then we bombed. And I said, I've been lied to so many times by the intel community. Here's something I want. Show us proof before you bomb people. That's it. That's all I want. I don't care if it's Venezuela, if it's Libya, if it's Syria, if it's Saudi Arabia, if it's Yemen. I don't care. I don't trust them anymore. Hey, just take our word. We need to bomb these people. Garbage. And so I criticized Trump for that. And the crap I got for that. You're not a real Trump fan. You're not a real Republican. You just pretended all this time. Yeah, I strategically put out videos and pretended all this time. What a great actor I am, right? Pretending to support Trump this whole time, just so I could, over Syria, of all things, which, by the way, was the only thing that the Democrats actually cheered him on for. Isn't that weird? The only time, you turn on MSNBC, the only time they were like, oh yeah, Trump's doing a good job is when he's bombing Syria. I remember they were like, finally he looks presidential. When he's bombing people? Or the deficit? Now, I spent 8 years with a bunch of Republicans saying it's ridiculous the amount that the national debt's going up under Obama. But when Trump does it, all of a sudden I'm a sellout for criticizing Trump. Now, does those things mean I'm still not supporting Trump? No, not at all. I think quite clearly I support him all the time on here. But I will never, ever allow me to be a cult of personality where I like the person more than my ideas. If you're a free thinker, you will never find a single person in the world that agrees with you 100% on everything, let alone politically. And by extension of that, you'll never find a political party that 100% agrees with you. And so if your gut feelings, I always need to protect the politician, I always need to protect the party, I think you're thinking of it the wrong way, you know? And so don't get mad, you know, for me, I hope, you know, and again, I'm small time, I get it, you know? I get 50, 60 people on average to watch my videos. I don't care though, I really enjoy doing this, I really do. But, you know, even though I'm not that big, I hope that people could trust, you know, at least I'm getting Rob's real feelings on this. Yes, sometimes my bias, all of our bias seeps through. It always does. That's why I try to be upfront with my bias. I am a Trump supporter. I am a Republican. You know? I try to be biased about that up front. Yeah, it is a great song. I try to be upfront about that. And sometimes it seeps in. But I really am trying my best that if someone I like does something I dislike, I call them out for it. I would rather watch that. You know, that's even, there are people I watch on the left, like Jimmy Dore, Aaron Mattei, you know. I've been watching this guy Destiny and David Pakman. I don't agree with them a lot, but I think, and they certainly are biased at points, and there are points I can see it. It's easier for me to see it because I'm on the other side. But, you know, at least they're usually arguing in good faith. And I would rather see someone who disagrees with me that I think's actually arguing in good faith as opposed to just always defending their team than someone who agrees with me, but they're always just defending their team. So, I don't know, just my little rant. In that vein, I guess something else worth talking about. So, I would say two of my favorite politicians on the Republican side are Mike Lee and Rand Paul. And they just blocked the 9/11 Victims Fund. So, for those of you who don't know, there's a fund for all of the first responders. Oh, thank you, Blaz. But I'm sure we would... Blase, I'm sure we would disagree on stuff. I'm sure we would. We might disagree on this subject coming up. There's there's a fund for the first responders, right? Because it turns out all that dust and all the stuff they went through, a lot of them are receiving cancer and other ailments, just really bad. And so there was a fund set up for them, but the fund's running out. And so there's basically a push to extend that fund for 70 years. So basically, beyond all reason, anyone that suffered through that would be gone by then. Which I'm all for. I'll explain why. Rand Paul and Mike Lee temporarily stopped the bill from being put forward because it's not that they dislike the bill, it's that they want, when you write a law that says you're going to spend money, they want it to specifically offset from something. So in other words, like just imagine that the government's got, this is obviously a gross oversimplification, but the government's got like 5 piles of money. So we have this, right now we got military spending, we got welfare spending, and we got social security spending, and we have, housing spending, those 4 things. And then, so we're going to add this new type of spending. So they're saying, okay, what pile of money are we going to pull from to get this money, is basically what they're saying. And they want that written into the law, which is not a bad thing to say. Jon Stewart comes out with one of the first responders and just shreds Rand Paul and Mike Lee. And I kind of agree with Jon Stewart, and here's why. Even though I agree with the sentiment of where Rand Paul and where Mike Lee are coming from, here's the problem. There are certain things sometimes that we're so ideological that we don't look at common sense. There are certain things that I think as all Americans we should agree on, that there's almost no debate on. One of those things is this. Our military veterans, regardless where they served, regardless of what you think if the war was just that they fought in, regardless if they fought in a war or not, every single military veteran that signed up The baseline for the conversation in discussing benefits from them is they should never, ever, ever have to pay for any medical procedure that results from their service, period. They should be given the best possible service we can have and in a timely manner and never have to pay for it. End of discussion. Period. Now, we could discuss what more benefits they get from there. But that should be the base. And the fact that this country has so many military people that are committing suicide and dying from stuff that we could be treating is a shame on this country. An absolutely disgusting shame. I don't care if you're a Democrat, a Republican, if you're for the Iraq War, if you were against it, it doesn't matter. Those people signed on the line knowing that their life was at risk. And the least we could do is take care of them medically. Period. The same is true of these first responders. And so because of that, I don't buy the pissing around, well, I'm going to stick to my ideology and, I think that we need to lower taxes and we need to have accountability. I agree, but there's literally a million things every year. Well, literally, I hate when people use the word literally. There are hundreds upon hundreds of bills that come up every year where you can make this point. Not this one. Pay them their money. I'm not one to get teary-eyed or anything, but you watch that footage of 9/11. Think of the courage you had to have. You're a firefighter and you have a family. You know the chances of you you're watching the buildings fall and you're running in there. And then you're going to screw over their friends and families, the ones that didn't die? That's so outrageous to me. Now, am I saying Rand Paul and Mike Lee are super malicious? No. I just think they're leaving their ideology avoid common sense on this. Get the damn bill done. Argue about fiscal responsibility in the next bill. So, now there are people that will disagree with me. Does this mean that I hate Mike Lee or I hate Rand Paul? No. I still agree with them on most of the issues, but they're dead wrong here, in my opinion. And that's a classic example. Those are two of my favorite politicians. I don't care. They're wrong. This was when I was running for Congress. This is something I was trying to tell people. They'd be like, do you support Trump? I was like, yeah, but I'll call him out. I don't want a representative that's just like, I'm going to defend whatever the party tells me 100% of the time. I want someone who's going to be honest and do what they think's right. So, don't worry, Eddie. People always ask me how much caffeine I drink. I'm not a coffee person. I'm always this fired up about everything. You think this is bad? You should see me watching the Pittsburgh Pirates. Oh my goodness, I lose my mind. But no, it's just who I am. I really do mean that about the troops. And there's other things. I think that one of the things that could help bring us together on the left and the right, and make no mistake about it, we do need to become less divisive. Now, we could argue who started it, who's more at fault. I have my biases. I think I know who's more to blame, which side. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. We need to try to do something. One of the areas where we can start to come together is, anyways, one of the areas we can come together is, I think most of us agree with what we want done. Everybody wants a country where everybody's happy. No one's starving to death. No one's ill. Everyone's got access to education. Everyone's got access to health care. The question is, how do we get there? And you can't be utopian about it. You can't just be like, love and love will find. I mean, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I should go back. One of these days I'll do a video where I go back and I read what I was writing during the conventions for the Republican and Democrat convention going into 2016. And it was just utter nonsense. Trump is full of darkness and fear, and the Democrats are all about hope and love. What does that mean? These cliches mean nothing. We need, and I know Marianne Williamson's getting the crap now for this, but I think there's more to her than just love conquers all. But, that idea of love conquering things, that's a cliche. How does love conquer, the guy who hurt his back at work and now needs back surgery and doesn't have insurance? You know what? Forget the insurance, buddy. Just love a little more. How about, love's gonna conquer ISIS? Just nonsense, But we all want the same things. And it's just how to get there. So, with healthcare, I'm a Republican, right? Everyone listening, you know this. I'm a Republican. I ran for Republican for Congress. I'll say this about healthcare. I think that Bernie's type of, Medicare for all plan is terrible. The idea of eliminating private insurance is so atrocious, it defies belief. I don't know how anyone could win an election on that, because everyone who's insured now has to understand I'm going to pay way more in taxes and my quality of care is going to go way down. I will no longer have the service that I like. So I think it's a terrible idea. And I think it's really complicated. I have some ideas like competition across state lines, posting the prices of every surgery, government controls on pricing, things like that. But even though I hate Bernie's plan, ask yourself this. What is the Republican plan for healthcare? Can anyone tell me? I know for 8 years it was repeal Obamacare. Okay. And then they got the House, the Senate, and the presidency, and they didn't. And what did they recommend replacing it with? So even though I'm a Republican, it seems at least, even though I think that it's a terrible attempt, people like Bernie are making an attempt, aren't they? What are the Republicans doing? Every time Trump tries to talk about healthcare, the Republicans rebuke him. They're like, well, we don't want to talk. This will hurt us in the election. I'm sick and tired of that crap. Yes, winning elections are important. But solving problems are important. What's it matter if you keep winning elections and you never solve problems? That's why I ran. Immigration. How many years have we been told we'll get to the bottom, we'll protect the border, we'll solve it? Nothing's done. Nothing's done. Healthcare. Yeah, we'll have something to fix it. Nothing's done. Middle class shrinking. Nothing's done. You keep hearing about how bad the opioid crisis is. Anything getting done? What's getting done to fix the opioid crisis? And I'm saying this as a Republican. It just, sometimes you have to put the ideology aside and say, what can we do? Now, I know what people that are Republicans will say, and I know what the Democrats will say. What's the other side's fault? Yeah, but. And yes, if the other side's unwilling to compromise, it becomes very difficult. But we're getting more and more extreme. For God's sakes, the news cycle this week's, again, Trump's tweets. Again! Who cares? There was a domestic terror attack on an ICE facility. Not a word breathed. It's unbelievable. And I will guarantee you, if that domestic terror attack had been some, David Duke type customer or Richard Spencer type customer, if they were wearing a MAGA hat, I guarantee that's all you would have heard all week. More than a week. So yes, I understand both sides are crappy and different things. But who controls all these cultural institutions that control our dialogue? Controls Facebook and Twitter and YouTube and the mainstream media and academia. And, maybe you just say, I'm so sick and tired of politics. I'm done with it. I don't care about it. I just want to laugh. I'll turn on a late night show. Who do we got here? Stephen Colbert. Making fun of Trump. How about Jimmy Kimmel? Making fun of Trump. How about Jimmy Fallon? Making fun of Trump. How about Conan? Making fun of Trump. Isn't that great? Whatever, then I'll just go watch a movie. All a bunch of actors that spend all their free time telling me how evil Trump is. Screw it. I'll turn on a sporting event. How's the women's national soccer team? All complaining about Trump. Where do you go? Well then, okay. I'll go to Google. I'll go to YouTube. I'll go to Twitter. I'll just hang out with people who think like me because I'm tired of being bombarded by all this crap. Nope, you get censored from there. Shadow banned, demonetized. You know, that's probably the other thing that's worth talking about. This expert that testified, there's a really good 6-minute YouTube video you can watch. Ted Cruz talking to this expert about Google's ability to manipulate the elections. This is something I've been saying. Look, I'm not a genius. There are people way smarter and that are more expert than me in almost every area. I don't know, what would my area of expertise be? How to eat ice cream like a fat guy. I could eat pudding with the best of them. Chocolate, at least. Other than that, I'm not an expert. You know? But I have a common sense. I have a good BS detector. Jimmy Dore talks about this all the time. He's a progressive comedian, but he's always like, why do I have to be the one, that says stuff? I'm just some hack comedian. You know? My IQ's not as high as all these journalists, all these academia people. It's the same with me. So how can I notice this stuff and not them? It lets you know that it's willful, or that they're so biased they can't see it. You know? So I can't tell you specifically how algorithms work, and I can't tell you this and that and exactly what's going on. But here's what I can tell you. Now, I listen to a bunch of people on the left tell me over and over and over and over and over again that things like fake news and trolls on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, how much power they have. Remember Cambridge Analytica? For those of you who don't remember, this was this firm that was hired by some Republicans. I think even Trump's team hired them. And what they did was they put out those stupid surveys you see on Facebook, and it would be I don't know, rank your top 80s bands or something. I don't know exactly what it said, but crap like that. And you fill it out, and the little fine print says, by the way, we get access to all of your information by you agreeing to this survey. So you fill out the survey, now all of a sudden they get access to all of your Facebook profile and your messages you send to people. Now, to people like me and you, it doesn't seem like a big deal. It's okay, whatever. But that's incredibly important to advertisers because they know how to target ads specifically to you. They know who to target. They know what the most effective type of ad would be, how to gear that towards you. And believe it or not, a lot of political campaigning is just sophisticated ads. It's the same idea. You're trying to convince someone to buy your razor over the other company's razor. Same way. You're trying to convince them to vote for you over the other side. So they got this information, and then Republicans used that information to kind of know who to contact, who to try to reach, what type of messages to put out to try to turn out more votes. And you might say that's crappy and it's unethical. Certainly a lot of Democrats did. And they wanted to press charge. I don't know if they ever did. I think they did press charges with Cambridge Analytica. And, by the way, a British firm, I believe. And had all these hearings, and it was devastating. This is cheating. Trump, oh, my God, they stole the election. Trump's team stole the election. So I believe this was broke. Now, don't hold me to this, but it was broke by one of the bigger UK papers. Broke this Cambridge Analytica story. So it was The Guardian or The Telegraph. Whichever one of those papers it was, because this was a while ago, about a year ago. But you could look this up. Don't just take my word for it. Whichever one of those papers it was that talked about how big deal this was, wrote an article in 2012, right after, and maybe it was 2013, but after the 2012 election, that talked about how Barack Obama and his campaign got all of these profiles and all of this data from the people running Facebook itself. And they said it was so shrewd, it allowed him to target his campaign, and it was the future of politics. What a great maneuver. And my take on this was, one, the obvious. So when the Democrats do it, it's a great maneuver, it's awesome. But then 4 years later, when the Republicans do it, it's evil, it's a crime. So that's obviously number one. But number two is this. If the story in 2016 is true, and this had such a devastating effect, that was one group, Cambridge Analytica, using a tiny, minute fraction of all the data on Facebook, as opposed to Obama working with the people running Facebook itself with access to all of Facebook's data. So which would be more effective and which would be more unethical? It seems clear. Now, let's take that same mentality, right? Trolls, Russian trolls, which we now know there's no proof we're operating in the behest of Putin. Check my video out on that. It's the biggest story I haven't seen anyone covering. We were told by everyone, Republicans and Democrats alike, everyone on the media, The Russians attacked us in two ways. They attacked us in two ways. One, they stole the DNC emails, which I still have yet to see any proof for. All I know is the DNC wouldn't leave. If they stole your emails, wouldn't you leave the FBI and look at your server? Well, the DNC chose not to let the FBI look at their server. But just take their word. But whatever, I'm not going to get into that. But two, Russian trolls on Facebook. They used Pokemon Go. They had ads on Pokemon Go. Now, yes, it was only like a couple $100,000 at most. I think I've seen the highest estimate was $500,000. And yes, there were only dozens of them doing it. And yes, most of the stuff had nothing to do with the election. And yes, most of the stuff wasn't even read until after the election. But it doesn't matter. That stole the election. The $500 billion that Hillary spent was outweighed by this pittance, less than $1 million. That's what we were told over and over. That's how powerful these trolls using these platforms were. You've heard that. We've heard it over and over. There were hearings on Capitol Hill. As soon as Trump won, remember the media, fake news, we have to fight fake news. Fake news is so huge. People spreading fake news on Facebook, fake news on Twitter. That's all you heard. Of course, once they started getting accused of peddling fake news, they stopped using that term, didn't they? But you heard that over and over. Okay, so it's quite clear that the left, the establishment left, and the media and academia and the entertainment industry and Silicon Valley, they all thought that was a huge deal. A few Russian trolls posting a few messages using a few $100,000s. Huge deal. Had the power to steal the election. Okay? So when we find out that all these same companies, the leadership is actively helping one side, the Democrats, over the other side, the Republicans. Now those same people that told us those trolls were a huge deal, it's not a big deal. Private companies, no big deal. Now if trolls using 0.00001 of the entire platform were that devastating, how the hell isn't the other 99.999 that's being controlled by the actual owners and people running these platforms being biased for the other side? How is that not newsworthy? How is that not a big story? That's why I don't have to understand exactly what the algorithm does. I know this. I know that we've seen report after report of people whistleblowing coming out of there saying they're censoring conservatives, sometimes intentionally, sometimes not. All the people that are in charge of actually making the algorithms and manually reviewing for censorship, almost all of them exclusively lean establishment Democratic Party. There are lawsuits of hostile environments in places like Google that anyone that dares to say that they're a Republican or supports Donald Trump. And we can see specifically over and over all these specific cases. Go back and watch the Jack Dorsey and Tim Pool episode of Joe Rogan's podcast. They have nothing. This happens over and over. Even if you don't believe it's happening, you would have to say, if you're one of the people that thought that the trolls could use the platform to be that successful, then you would say, well, we want to make sure that this bias isn't occurring from the people at the leadership, so let's have it investigate. Isn't that what you'd say? Yet, conspicuously, the same people that screamed the loudest about these Russian trolls, they're absent on this. They don't care. Oh, that's because it's helping their side. So anyways, this expert testifies, and it's complicated. I've heard this gentleman before on Tucker's show. He seems to know what he's talking about, but I'm not going to pretend to understand the science and the data behind it. But basically, he reaches the conclusion that Google has the ability in the last election and moving forward to flip between 2 to 15 million votes. And it's not difficult to believe, right? Here's an experiment. Try this. I don't know if any of you play video games on your mobile phone. Sometimes I'll be on Facebook or something, and I'll see an ad for a game, and I'll be like, oh, that game looks neat. And then 3 days later, I'll be like, what's the name of that game? I'll go to the App Store and I'll look it up. And you'll scroll through hundreds upon hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games, and you can't find that game. Because no matter how good the advertising of that game was, or how fun it looked, or how cheap it was, any of that, right? If you can't find it in the place that you look for it, then it's of no value to you. It's the same with, someone might write a tremendous article on why Trump would be a good candidate, or this Republican would be good, or why the Democrats would be bad. But if you can't find it, if the average person who's just casually searching, if it doesn't show up on the search, then what good is it? So not only are all of these cultural institutions, the media and the entertainment industry and academia, not only are they all predominantly establishment Democrat, but the people that are running the most powerful companies in the history of the world, like Google, that is controlling search algorithms, that's all they're feeding you. And so if we don't, like, it's not, and you might say, well, that's okay, I'm a Democrat. Just like with this Russia investigation, be careful what you wish for. Because once you start cheering for unelected people like corporate oligarchs, like the ones that run Google or Facebook, or you start cheering for unelected bureaucrats like the intel agency that made up all this crap and used opposition research to spy on Trump, once you start cheering for them, you will never get the choice to vote for someone that you want. You better hope what you want aligns with those people, because they're only going to get more powerful. And so, God forbid you vote for someone that Google doesn't like. You want to vote for someone Google doesn't like? Sorry, Google doesn't feel like pushing that person. Maybe that's a real left-wing progressive person. Yep, you don't get that. You get the next Hillary Clinton clone. That's who you get. You get Jeb Bush 2 versus Hillary Clinton 2. That's who you're going to get. So if we don't stand up to this nonsense and do something about it, it'll be too late. That's why, to me, the Russia investigation, to me, the two biggest stories going right now, and I didn't talk about either of them really today, is the Russia investigation and the Epstein case. And that's because both of them have the power to utterly devastate the establishment that's kind of really running our country. I really believe that. So, you know, Epstein in a different way. And I'll admit, I've talked about Epstein, don't get me wrong, and I will continue to talk about Epstein. But I know way more about the Russia stuff than I do about the Epstein stuff. Because with Epstein, until we see physical evidence, it's all hearsay. With the Russia stuff, what you knew from the outset was devastating. Opposition research was used by the intel agency under Trump, or under Obama, to spy on people connected to Trump's campaign. Then that information was leaked to the press and our allies to smear Trump and people connected to him. That's it. That's devastating, regardless of all the details of the story after that. Unless the details paint a very, like, it had to happen because the evidence was so overwhelming that Trump was a Russian agent. Well, we now know that wasn't true. They investigated for 2 years. Mueller, no expense spared. Couldn't find it. Those two stories, though, the Epstein and the Russia. Epstein in a slightly different way, right? But it does have the ability to shake the establishment to its core on both sides and through many countries. And I think that the Epstein probably has a better chance because the average person, it's easy to sell them on why having sex with children is bad. Like, that's the Russia stuff, though. It's like, it's difficult. Like, when you explain to people, like, you don't understand why our intel agency basically violating presidential campaigns' Fourth Amendment rights and using his justification for unverified opposition research, right? Like, this isn't how I try to say. You have an investigation into Trump and people connected to him to see if he was getting help from the Russian government. And in order to facilitate that investigation, you use evidence that was paid for by the other side that was help from a Russian government. So you use exactly what you're accusing the other people of doing as evidence to go after them. You know, it's absolutely devastating. So yeah, I'll be ending here. But yeah, just on these tweets, look, you know, I didn't think it was racist. I didn't think it was the greatest thing in the world morally. I didn't think it was strategic. You know, as far as his crowd chanting "send her back," it's not something I would do. But there's more hatred for the crowd saying that than all the people that have called them bigots and racists and Nazis and scumbags and toothless and flyover country and worthless and white lash. You get called those names so often, you're obviously going to have animosity. You watch people tear down the flag of the country you love and fly a Mexican flag. You watch people parroting the rhetoric of these congresswomen to use terrorist attacks on ICE facilities. Eventually, you're going to have enough. So, all right. Well, hey, thanks everyone for tuning. I might do something later tonight. I got to get a hold of some people to see if anyone wants to do a video with me. So look for that. please, I can't stress enough, if you haven't followed and liked me, please do so. I'm trying to get up to 1,000 subscribers so that I could live stream on my phone, because, YouTube changed the rules on that for some reason. So I would love to be able to do that, because I'm going to be trying to run a political campaign again. I'm not quite sure for what office at this point. Eventually in the future, it might be 6-8 years from now, it could be sooner, I will eventually run for Congress again. But it would be nice to be able to do things like mobile live stream when I'm at those events, so people could kind of see what's going on at those. So if you could recommend me to people, or if you could like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And you could also follow me at NorRobert on Twitter, where I'm trying to be more active there as well. So thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it, and have a good one.